Sifu ALEX RICHTER is an expert in Wing Chun Kung Fu. He shares a great deal of knowledge through his already famous YouTube channel called The Kung Fu Genius. We're going to talk about martial arts, training, movies, and of course, Bruce Lee. This is Sifu ALEX RICHTER for the Bruce Willow podcast. I think it's a little low. Let me just check with my producer, with my Dre.
Wow, so fancy.
Foda-se, puto, caralho. Caralho, sim.
Hey, girls. I can't use my headphones today for this podcast, so I'm going to need you to close the door and be quiet. Otherwise, we're going to hear all your hot nonsense in the background. All
Já
right?
estás a gravar?
And I don't think the martial arts people want to hear that kind of hot nonsense. Hey, Maria. Yes? Can you come here a second? You got to check this out.
Yeah, do a backhand spring for me.
Can you do a leg hold for Bruno right here? Just hold your leg right here. Just check this out.
Hey Maria, how are you? Holy, it's going all the way through. It's like a clock.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, give me 2:30 p.m. Oh my goodness.
2:30 p.m. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Keep at
so
it.
Anyway, yeah, they're both of them are into rhythmic gymnastics, and they can do all sorts of crazy stuff now. So yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, we're gonna have some fun in Hong Kong, man. I can't wait.
It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy.
I think I'm in need of such a spiritual trip. You know what I mean?
It's gonna be great. You're gonna have such a good time.
Yeah.
All the movie stuff you want to do, all the kung fu stuff, and I can't promise anything, but I might try to hook up some interesting people for us to meet. Ooh. But I'm not going to say anything about that because, that's usually kind of last minute arrangement stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to leave that out there.
I know Sammo Hung is pretty busy.
Epic, I guarantee you.
Well, we also had a great time when I was in New York earlier last year. Oh yeah, not this year, last year. Oh man, time goes by so fast. And I mean, like I said before, I mean, it's like your studio. It reminds me of, the Bruce Leroy, it's like the perfect Kung Fu studio in central New York. It's like, is it your dream come true?
Yeah, I always wanted to have like a very traditional Chinese Kung Fu school. I think probably even from back in the days from watching movies like The Last Dragon and just seeing like, the traditional Kung Fu school in the middle of the city, there was something very appealing to that. By the way, the Kung Fu school that they used for Bruce Leroy's school actually was a real Kung Fu school back in the day. It was run by my friend Sifu Carl Albright, who's like a Hong Kong and Northern Mantis expert. And that was his school, and they shot it at his school back then. So I know the dude whose school that was. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it looked like I thought it was like a garage that they decorated for the movie, but
no, that was actually a legitimate like Shaolin Kung Fu school in the 80s. Yeah, like as legit as it comes. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I love that. I mean, it's like, what's with the 80s is it your favorite decade, the 80s?
I think in hindsight, the 80s are looking cooler and cooler, I think, by the year. The music, the styles there was, we talked about it on the podcast a few times. And one of the things that we lost with Bruce Lee dying in 1973 was to see 1980s Bruce Lee, which would have been totally awesome. It's just something kind of cool if you think about it. We totally missed seeing that,
Yeah, he was kind of a fashion addict or something. I mean, it would be fun to see what kind of style he would portray in the 80s. Would he be more like a David Bowie type of, I'm an artist who can also kick your ass, or would he be more like a Stallone, like a little bit more casual? Would he wear All Stars, Converse All Stars? Would he wear those?
I don't know. I think those are too simple for him. He kind of well, if he did, in the I remember in the '80s when the All Stars were like got really cool again, and then it was just like they came out with crazier and crazier styles. When I was in, I'm not gonna say, but in the '80s, I had a pair of Converse All Stars, which were the double tall ones. You know, the ones that went like all the way, like they're not the normal high tops. They were the double tall ones, and they were hot pink.
Hot
And
pink.
I wore that in the '80s, and that was no, yeah. And I had a Michael Jackson, not the Thriller jacket. I had the, yeah, no, I had the Thriller jacket, not the Beat It one. And I wore that to school in the '80s, and no one said anything. You know what I mean? Like that was like, yeah, he's got a Michael Jackson jacket. That's pretty cool. No one said anything. With the black parachute pants with the zippers. I used to wear that. Like that was regular clothing back then.
Like Eddie Murphy and Raw, something like that.
Yeah, not quite like the full matching
I mean,
suit, but
in
like, I
Delirious,
think,
in Raw, he's like actually wearing purple. In Delirious, you remember
yeah,
that first stand-up comedy
yeah,
special that he did? Yeah, wow, wow,
yeah,
I love it.
yeah. It was crazy, wild. Yeah,
Wow, Michael Jackson. I mean, so many stars that have gone away. Now Tina Turner. Shit,
yeah.
are we left with
It's
all
crazy.
the crap?
Yeah, I know. What? Yeah, who's? Yeah, like all the real heroes are kind of gone, and now it's like, yeah, who's really around? You know, and I think also nowadays, like words like like everyone's a legend, right? And I'm like, I think people are using those words a little too freely, right? They're
Yeah,
legit legends, and most of them are not around anymore. You know, are they going to call Jake Paul a legend in 20 years from now? Like it's
oh
like,
man.
you know, everyone, this term legend gets thrown around to everyone, and it's like, no, man, Michael Jackson was a legend, Elvis was a legend, Bruce Lee was a legend, right? Some of these, internet stars, I don't know if they're quite legendary status yet.
Yeah, I mean, what 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 type of what type of music do you usually listen to? I mean, if you have to if you have to listen to music just to feel good, I mean, not for training or anything like that, not for martial arts movies. We'll get into that later. But what type of music? Like, are you a crazy Michael Jackson fan?
Yeah, well, you can't see from here, but right on the other side, I have the full poster, like the Thriller album poster, right on my wall here. So,
Wow.
yeah, bit of a Michael Jackson fan. I have a very eclectic music taste. Obviously, I love Wu Tang, I love East Coast rap, but like love Michael Jackson, '80s Prince, Madonna. But even I listen to like Falco and like crazy stuff like from the '80s, like
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, but I could also listen to Belle Biv DeVoe, Poison, like all that kind of stuff. Like
Ooh.
I can get into some weird '90s R&B and stuff. So like, yeah, it depends on my mood, but I listen to all sorts of crazy stuff.
Okay, we'll go with that. So, in the album Thriller, which are your favorite songs? I think this tells a lot about a person
Well,
without being
really,
Thriller. Without being Thriller.
yeah, of course. Well, like, Billie Jean is kind of for me. It's the classic. Also, when you think about it's the unveiling of the moonwalk and all that kind of stuff, and like the everything about that music video, everything is amazing.
Oh, so you're going with the safest choice, Billie Jean.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say beat it, like
No,
the
that's the
second
second safest
safest choice.
choice. I love PYT. Why don't you love it? PYT, pretty young thing. I love that one. I don't know
And
why.
has Janet Jackson is singing backup on that song too. If you listen,
Shit, I
she
didn't know that.
yeah, she's one of the female backup vocals. It's a young Janet Jackson on PYT. Yeah.
This is actually funny because I mean, we're nerds, obviously. Obviously, we're nerds, and we don't mind. And you're like a factoid machine. You're like a Sifupedia. You're like a
I'm a veritable cornucopia of useless information, as other people have put it. So yeah.
I love it, man, and I gotta congratulate you on your podcast and the one that you've done with John Little about Bruce Lee's training methods. I've watched it. I don't know, maybe 10 times already. Maybe 10 times
Yeah, it's
already.
great. I'm gonna have him back on the podcast soon because he just wrote another book. It's not out yet, but yeah, it's called Wrath of the Dragon, and it's chronicles of all of Bruce Lee's real fights. So John Little went, because it's actually based somewhat off of that other episode I did with John Little where we talked about all of Bruce Lee's real fights.
Uh
That
huh.
was the first episode, I think, with John Little,
Yeah,
and the
exactly. Yeah.
second one was about the training methods. And then so I don't know if it was our episode that gave him the idea, but then what he started to do is chronicle all the fights that Bruce Lee had according to hearsay, according to this guy, that guy. Go and look at the evidence, get as much as he could, kind of to back it up, and then actually put a real life chronicle of how many fights did Bruce Lee have and what were the results and all this stuff. So that's his next project. I can't say too much about it because
Yeah,
that's
of
kind of
course.
his thing and should
Uh-huh.
be coming out soon. But I'll definitely have him back on the podcast when that thing comes out.
Oh man, I can't wait. I can't wait. And how did it all start for you? I mean, what was the first what was the first reference? I mean, what did you see? Who did you hear? Why kung fu? Why Wing Chun? Or how did it all start?
Yeah, so I started karate, but yeah, I started karate in the '80s. So I suppose I had a very '80s origin story. I had a
Hmm.
neighbor who was bigger than me, was kind of a bully, and one day was leaving his house, and he wouldn't give me one of my toys back. And then, as I asked for it, he said I had to fight him for it. And he punched me in the mouth and knocked out one of my teeth, and it was like, oh, and I had no idea what to do. So I it was around the time of Karate Kid. I asked my mom to sign me up for karate lessons, and I started taking karate lessons. And just like in '80s action movie, I got my revenge on this kid. I punched him back and made him cry, and
Wow.
he ended up joining the karate school with me, and
Oh,
we started to train together.
that's Cobra Kai.
uh,
That's 80s Cobra Kai,
yeah, it's
right?
a little Cobra Kai-ish. And then after doing karate for about 6 to 7 months, I was homesick one day from school, and my dad rented Enter the Dragon and brought it home so I could watch it while I was, getting better. And I saw Enter the Dragon, and I was like, "What is this sorcery?" I didn't want to do kung fu. I wanted to be Bruce Lee. Like, like it
Yeah.
changed everything for me. And I remember seeing that movie, and then that was it. That was so I was around eight, maybe almost nine, when I saw Bruce Lee, and then here on the East Coast, every Saturday they used to show kung fu movies on TV. It was called Black Belt Theater, and this is like the Wu Tang Clan when they always talk about watching those movies growing up. That's because here in the New York, New Jersey kind of tri-state area, they used to show it on Channel 5 every Saturday. It was either one or two, like a double feature,
Wow.
usually Shaw Brothers. And so I started to watch those on Saturdays. And the first kung fu movie I saw after Enter the Dragon was Heroes of the East with Gordon Liu.
Oh man,
And
that's my favorite.
so that
That's
was
my
like
favorite Shaw Brothers movie of all time.
it's absolutely one of my favorites. Maybe not just because it's the first one, but years later I went back and watched it. I was like, this is a very very good movie. And so if Enter the Dragon made me fall in love with Bruce Lee, Heroes of the East made me fall in love with Chinese kung fu because it was all about that contrast between the Chinese and the Japanese styles, and it was really incredible. Years later, I had the chance to meet Yasuaki Kurata, the main
Oh wow.
villain, I suppose, from that movie, and
Yeah.
I was able to give him a banner from my school. He has a school in Hong Kong, and he did a seminar, and it was like $20 for the seminar, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm signing up for that. I did the seminar. I gave him one of my flags, and I told him, like, that film is probably the reason why I became an absolute kung fu nerd, and like my entire career is not just because I saw Bruce Lee, what also was because I saw Heroes of the East. And I'm like, he was part of that, and I just like thanked him, and he was so humble, and he was like, oh, I'm so happy to hear that, and he was so sweet and so nice, and it was like everything I could have wanted. Meeting the person who was in the movie that changed my life, like, and he was sweeter than you could possibly imagine. It was such a great day.
I had no idea. And in that Channel 5, were the movies dubbed or subtitled? Were they in
Yeah, they were
Cantonese?
dubbed. That's,
Um,
hence the whole kind of Wu Tang using the, toad style is immensely strong. Like all of that stuff was from those terribly dubbed Shaw films in the '80s. Yeah.
but I love it. I mean, if you give me one of those movies to watch, let's say Snake and Eagle Shadow, whatever, I don't like to watch the Chinese version, either Mandarin or Cantonese, because I grew up watching with the English dubbing. So even if it's
Right.
something stupid like a teacher, teacher, master, I mean, I like those voices. I need those voices. So what I did, what I did just the other day, my girlfriend's father actually gave me his old VHS recorder because I probably screwed mine and I didn't want to buy a new one, whatever. So I got my all my VHS tapes back, and I had about 400. So I do have a lot of tapes. I had like keep in mind, guys who are listening and are a little bit younger. Nowadays, you can get pretty much everything online, but at the time, we had to go to the movie store and probably rent and record from one VHS recorder to the other, play
Two
on
two
one and
VCRs.
two VCRs exactly. Yeah, VCR. That's it, VCR.
Yep.
And I did it all the time. So I'm like a pirate. So I did it all the time. I'm a copycatter, and I remember having like something like 60 or no, maybe 55 Jackie Chan movies, which was a lot for someone who's in Portugal, barely ever getting to. I mean, I had membership to like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 video stores. So I was like, wow, this kid is going, this kid is doing all that's needed to become an actual nerd. So anyways,
Right.
since now I go online and I go on YouTube or whatever, or even try to download a couple of movies, and they're all, or pretty much they're almost all in Cantonese or in Mandarin. So
Yeah.
I miss those dubbed voices. So I go back to my VHS tapes, and it's like, screw it, I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna work out to them, and I'm gonna keep listening to the teacher, teacher.
Teacher?
Yeah?
How long do we do this?
Not too long. 48 games, right?
Oh, 48 games.
Yeah.
48 games? I can't.
Don't worry. Won't take too long.
It's my comfort, It's like I want to feel like a
Right.
kid again.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I totally get it. I mean, I grew up with all, listening to the dubbed versions of that. And then it wasn't until I became a teenager and I lived in Seattle. We moved from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast of Seattle. And I used to go to the Chinatowns and get memberships at the video stores in Chinatowns. And then I could rent all of those Kung Fu movies, but they would be in the original language. And then I would dub them, I would copy them, and then I would watch them in the original language. And then as I started to learn a little bit more about Cantonese, I started to appreciate the original language because the jokes are actually funnier in Chinese if you know what they're saying. The movie The
Oh,
Prodigal Son, which is in that poster right behind me, you cannot compare the English dub to the Chinese dub when you know the slang that they're using in the Chinese one. It's way, way, way better. But you have
oh,
to have some kind of appreciation for that or knowledge of that for that to make sense. Otherwise, I totally get wanting to hear, who's your teacher? Like hearing that version of all those movies, right? I heard Chinese boxing lacks any real power, like I get it. I totally get it.
I
Right?
love it. Oh, I love it. I love it. And then, so was karate was it Shotokan that you tried first?
No, it was karate, but in reality, it was a form of Tang Sudo. It was like the Chuck Norris karate stuff, which was really Korean martial arts. But unless you were like at a hardcore Taekwondo school, even the Korean martial arts just called it karate in the '80s because a lot of people Taekwondo. The name Taekwondo was not quite as household or Tang Sudo. I did that for a few years, and then later my mom switched me to a Korean Taekwondo school where I was like the only white kid in the whole school. They were all Koreans. The instructor barely spoke English. They beat the living snot out of us, and that was a whole different phase of my martial arts journey. But yeah, so it was really some form of Korean martial art before I officially did Taekwondo. Yeah.
Oh, so you yeah, okay, okay. So would there be any sort of transfer? So there would be a lot of kicks.
Yeah, so I joined the World Taekwondo Federation, which is the same
Mm,
Taekwondo
yeah.
style that's in the Olympics. It's
Okay.
like with with the V-neck uniform, and the style that I came from. I had gotten to a brown belt, and then when I went over there, I had to like learn the new forms and stuff. But they kind of let me pick up as a red belt, which is their version of a brown belt. And then I eventually
Okay.
got my black belt in Taekwondo, and it was very hard earned. The Korean instructors were no joke. They used to beat the crap out of us.
Oh well, that's amazing. That gives you sort of a. So this was all prior to you actually trying Kung Fu, right?
Yes, the only in Central Jersey where I grew up in, there was only one kung fu school like in the next town over, and there was no way my mom was going to drive me there. The karate school was within walking distance of my home,
Mm,
so
okay.
that was much easier. Besides that, if you really wanted to learn kung fu, you had to come to New York City, and there was no way my mom was going to let me come to New York City as a child because those were the 80s. New York City was a different place in the 80s. You didn't go to New York casually as an outsider unless you were going for a play or you had to, because New York was a wild place in the 80s.
Yeah, a lot of movies depict that. Was it really like Taxi Driver and the Joker and the
Uh, yeah,
King
it
of
was pretty
Comedy?
wild. One of my students, one of my first students, he's Chinese. He spent a lot of time in Chinatown in the 80s, and he tells me a story. He was having dim sum in the 1980s there in Chinatown, and someone came in and pulled a gun on the cash register and was like robbing the dim sum restaurant. And they got a bunch of cash. He walks out. The lady, the Chinese lady who ran the place, as the robber walks out, she comes out with a gun in the street, starts aiming it at him while he's running away, and shoots and like hits the ground or whatever. And then finally, like the cops got it. He was like, "Yeah, that was like a Wednesday." like, you know?
So that was the beginning of Michelle Yeoh. That was her beginnings.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. But yeah, the 80s were crazy. I'd only gone to New York twice as a child, like to go to a Broadway show or
Yeah.
something. And I just remember as a kid, my mom holding on to me, like, and that's in Times Square. And it's like, you just got to stay away from all these weird people, and we got to go right to the show and then leave. New York was a wild place in the 80s, man. So there was no way my mom was going to let me come to Chinatown to do kung fu in the 80s in New
Wow.
York City. So I had to read like inside kung fu magazines and buy Bruce Lee's books and stuff. And even when I would go to Germany as a child with my dad, I would buy books about Bruce Lee in German. I could barely read any German at that time, but I would just get whatever I could and just look at the pictures and watch and see what I can teach myself, and kind of doing these kind of things before I knew what I was doing. So yeah.
So you said German at that time, which means that you speak German now?
I can't speak German now, unfortunately. Yes.
Wow, man. Do you spend a lot of
Yeah.
are your days filled with a lot of like getting to know stuff, reading a lot and practicing or having
Yeah.
classes? Do you keep
Yeah. I
how do you keep that momentum? I mean, how do you keep what's a typical day like for you?
So I prioritize. Well, I have a lot of work to do between teaching and my appointments and stuff for the school, but I always make sure that every day I learn something. Whether it's watching videos on YouTube where I'm learning about topics, history, world history, culture, whatever stuff that has nothing to do with martial arts. I read a lot. I have a huge reading stack. I read tons of books, and I'm kind of like, if you live to be 74, 75 years old, that's 4,000 weeks. It's not a lot of weeks.
Damn.
And I feel like, I've lived about 2,300 something weeks out of potentially 4,000. So I got a lot of stuff I want to learn. I don't take my time here on this earth for granted. I love learning new things. Every day I get up like I cannot know enough. Even in my own martial art, I train jujitsu once a week with one of the best guys from Henzo Gracie here. I'm
Wow.
learning about anatomy and stuff, and so I don't stop because all of it makes me a better instructor. And I think that being a boring person is kind of a sin. You need to learn a lot so you can have
Oof.
conversations, you can be entertaining, and so I'm just afraid of being a boring person.
Wow. 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 Did you? I gotta ask you this. Did you ever like burn out or something? I mean, of all that, wanting to know everything and teaching classes all day, and how do you keep from not becoming a little bit, a little bit to the
Yeah.
other side, or a little bit of OCD or something. I mean, just because
Yeah,
I once found myself going a little bit in that direction, I was like, wow, why can't I sleep? Why can't I be
Right,
just calm
right.
down?
Sure. I get it. I mean, this whole thing about like learning so much, like, and
Yeah,
reading a lot, that's really something I've
exactly.
always been interested in learning, but that's something I've really picked up in the last few years when I kind of realized like I'm past 40 now, and there was so many topics I didn't know anything about. Even within martial arts, like subsections of things about history or language or culture, and I'm like, I got too much to learn. I better start doing it now. So really, this kind of push has been in the last few years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, burnout is always a thing. Luckily, I really love what I do. I have a really awesome team that kind of handles stuff in New York. So if I go away for a couple weeks, I know the school's not going to burn down. I can teach. I can take a little time off. And yeah, it's getting the whole kind of work life balance thing is not something you just get. It's something you always have to work towards. And if I find that I'm working a little bit too much and I'm losing touch with like myself, then I'll just dial back the work a little bit and spend a little more time working out, doing the things that I like. So it's a process. It's not something you ever arrive at. It's something you always have to be kind of plucking the strings a little more this way, a little more this way, depending on what's going on. It's also like my diet. People ask me what I eat. What I eat depends on my workload that day. If I'm training a lot, I eat differently than if I am sedentary for the whole day. So I take every day a little bit differently. I book them differently and try to keep it flexible. The every day is a little bit different, so it doesn't feel like too much routine.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think people should talk about these things. I definitely believe that there's a fine line between you wanting to learn and going all the way with everything that's being bombarded to us, especially in social media. Like, you must do this, you must do that. Every second of your day should be learning, should be doing, should be. But with you, I kind of find that you have that life, work, and other interests balance. And whenever I see your podcast, I know that you have a lot of knowledge on a lot of different topics. You can talk a little bit about war. You can talk a little bit about politics. You can talk a little bit about, obviously, Bruce Lee, a lot about Bruce Lee. I mean, you do dwell on a lot of different subjects, and that's what I feel that makes you a well-rounded guy. Because let's be honest, if you only talked about Wing Chun, I mean, I don't know much about Wing Chun, and I would probably not want to go in the rabbit hole or through the rabbit hole of only Wing Chun. So I think that
Right.
makes you a much more interesting kind of guy. So don't worry, you're not boring. Don't worry.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
At all, at all, at all. Yeah, yeah. And how long have you been speaking Cantonese?
Well, my Cantonese is not that great. My Cantonese is passable for very basic conversation, but somewhat specialized in the martial arts stuff. It's something I've been doing on and off for a while. I've been picking up on that a little more lately, like in these last few years, where I'm like, I need to learn more. Part of that was also picking up my Cantonese studies and also studying Mandarin a little bit too, because
Yeah, me
it
too.
seems an inevitability that you have to learn that damn language. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of picking it up. I'm team Hong Kong, team Cantonese. I begrudgingly learn Mandarin because it's like the overlords deem it so. But but it's still interesting, and I'm fascinated with all aspects of Chinese culture. But my Cantonese is you'll see when we're in Hong Kong. It's like I'm good for like directions and going here and doing this or whatever. But if someone wants to have a conversation about banking in Chinese, I'll probably
Oh
tune
man,
out.
that's yeah.
Like I don't know enough words for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been learning Mandarin for 3.5 years, and I feel like I know shit. It's like whenever I get to a Chinese person, it's like ni hao. It's like, is that all you got? 3.5
That's
years of
right.
studying
That's
that
right.
crap, but it's so tough. So it's like I
Right.
gotta stop myself from being angry at myself for
Yeah.
not progressing as quickly as I wanted to, because everything
Right.
is progression, right? 1% each day and stuff like that. But when you're doing it for like 3 or 4 years, and then you watch the news and you can't even make out 2 or 3 words in a single sentence, it's like, what the hell am I doing with my time? So it's like I guess it's like martial
Yeah.
arts, right? Like mastering the basics, and you do the basics for so long, so long that it's like, oh, now it popped out, and I didn't even think about it.
Right. I totally understand that because there was a point where I had been studying Cantonese for a long time, and I would go to Hong Kong and I'd still be like blown out of the water whenever like people started conversing quickly. And I just had to go like, yeah, but like I'm still getting better. I'm still getting better. Don't compare yourself to others. One thing I started to
Yeah,
do, like, and I would give you this advice is don't try watching the news because you're going to listen to a high level of Mandarin spoken. And you know what you do? You go on YouTube and you watch children's cartoons that you already have seen in. So watch Peppa Pig in Mandarin.
yeah, Peppa
All
Pig,
right.
yeah.
And you'd be surprised how much more you can pick up. So you gotta start at that level, right? I went through the whole Peppa Pig and Cantonese phase, and that's you learn a lot surprisingly watching those kids shows because they are geared towards the kind of level that we are at in those languages, you know.
Did you ever think about doing those videos? I think this is one. I think this guy's from New York. Yeah, of course he's from New York. Xiao Ma. There's this kid who goes on in Chinatown. He starts speaking English to the Chinese people, and then all of a sudden he starts speaking Mandarin to them. I'm like, oh, you speak, you 会说中文? And he's like, yeah. He starts speaking with them, and it's like he goes viral. I think you should do something like that in a kung fu school or something, doing like the switch to the Cantonese and seeing their reactions, like, oh, you speak so well.
Well, I had a similar situation with my good friend Bobby Samuels, who's made films in Hong Kong. He was a student of Sammo Hung. He speaks Cantonese and he's black. All right, so
Yeah,
we
that's
we had the
weird
craziest
combo.
moment. Yeah, when we first met Angela Mao together. And I met Angela, and Angela, although she's been in New York for a very long time, she doesn't really speak any English. She only speaks Mandarin and
Mandarin, right?
Cantonese.
Yeah.
Well, she speaks Cantonese from all of her years in working in
Mm,
Hong Kong.
okay.
So I told her because Bobby wasn't in yet, and I told her in Cantonese. I said, "Oh, Sammo Hung's student is coming, and he'll be here in a few minutes, right?" And she was like, "Oh, okay." And then Bobby walks in, and he's a black guy, and she didn't think that that was Sammo Hung's student. And then he comes up, and I introduce him in Cantonese, and then he says a few words to her in Cantonese, and there was just this moment when she looks at me, and she looks at him, and she's like kind of like what's going on here, like this was not what she expected at all. But I think the coolest moment for me, and it does come off like a bit of a humble brag or what, and I will brag the shit out of this because this really happened, was one of my best moments. We brought Jihan J. Do you know who Jihan J is?
Yeah, the one who would the guy from, I think it was Hapkido, right? Who fought
Yeah.
Bruce Lee in Game of Death.
Yeah, the second guy who fought Bruce Lee, the guy with the gold and everything, right?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
he had been living nearby. I think he's maybe in the Southwest now, but there'd been some point he was living in New Jersey,
Oh,
and he was Angela Mao's teacher for the movie Hapkido.
Hapkido, yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Angela came from an opera background, very similar to other stuntmen, but she came from an opera background in Taiwan. So the only formal martial art she ever learned was Hapkido from Jihan J. So she considers Jihan J like her Sifu, right? And what she didn't know is he was living in the States since maybe the 70s, and they had not reconnected since 74. So we got Jian J to come to her restaurant and reconnect with Angela Mao for the first time since 1974. And that was back maybe in 2017.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
amazing to see her. Like when she saw him, she was like almost in tears. And she took it because he walks with a cane now. He's much older. She took his jacket and sat him down and was treating him like one would treat their Sifu. But he doesn't speak Chinese and she doesn't really speak English. So when we were at the table in her restaurant, I was translating. Jihan J would say something in English and I would translate it to her in Cantonese and then back and forth. And there was just a moment where I was like, wait a minute. Like here
Mm.
I am, I just like was some kid who was into these movies and I'm translating for the guy who fought Bruce Lee in Game of Death in the yellow tracksuit, and like
Wow.
he was in that movie with Bruce Lee, and then the woman who played Bruce Lee's sister in Enter the Dragon. And I'm
Oh.
sitting here, and I'm the one doing the translation, and it was just like this culmination of this was inevitable that this would eventually become my life because this is all I've cared about since I was 8. And
Oh
here it
man.
is, and I'm doing this, and it was just this moment where I kind of saw I almost like stepped out of my body for a moment. And I was looking at this going like, what? Like this
What
is
in the
crazy.
world?
This is
Wow.
totally crazy and still one of the coolest days of my life.
Does she miss those times? Would she want to go back for some reason, or not so much? Because
So
sometimes
she has, yeah.
she can. I don't know. From what I saw, and I think I saw some video. I'm not sure if it was Charles Damiano, the collector. I don't know.
Possibly.
Either for pictures or something. It's like she's one of those people that wanted to get out of the business. I don't know. I felt that a little bit, but I'm not sure if I'm correct.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, and you're very intuitive in seeing that. She gave up her whole film life and came to the States to basically start a new life. She opened a restaurant out in Bayside in Queens, and she kind of gave up all that stuff. And so it was only in like the recent years, I say like the last 8 or 9 years, where the New York Times did an article about her because people had been looking for her, that she suddenly was put back in the spotlight where she was like, I remember for years, it was like, oh, Angela Mao owns a Chinese restaurant in New York. Everyone had heard that, but we didn't know where because there are so many Chinese restaurants in New York. It's like if someone tells you that, it's like, well, good luck. How are you going to find her?
Yeah.
And then finally they found her and we went over there, and she's always very nice. And when I go over there and she sees me, she'll even go in the back and cook the noodles for me and my family. And like, so
Oh.
she'll bring it out and like literally will cook it for us. And it's like so weird. But you could definitely tell like she's over that whole period of her life. And I feel a little bad sometimes because she keeps getting visited by people who are like, hey, can you sign this? Can you look at this?
Hmm.
Hey, can you tell me about this
Oh
movie?
yeah.
And it's very clear that that's a chapter of her life that's over. And so whenever I see her, I don't bug her about that stuff. I just like, just say, hey, it's so nice to see you. And she likes to see my daughters, like, and like, oh, your daughter's so cute and all this kind of stuff. But I don't like to go there and be like, so what was it like? What was Bruce Lee like? What was Raymond Chow like? Because, I think she gets a lot of that. And I can tell by looking at her that she kind of makes her uncomfortable sometimes. So I never like I never push on the gas whenever I see her. She's, just like, that's her thing. She did once say something that she didn't think that anyone would know who she was when she moved to the States. And apparently, it was either the first or second day she came to New York. She was walking through Times Square, and someone was like, are you Angela Mao? And like she had no idea about that whole kung fu genre was so big and still so beloved over here that people would know because she moved here in like 94. That's like more than 20 years after Enter the Dragon, maybe 15, 10 years after she stopped making movies, and people knew who she was, and that kind of blew her away. She had no idea.
Um, I think yeah, when I had the honor of being one of the last people to interview Bob Wall, and I know that Bob Wall, he had his ways, he was like always boasting and stuff like that, but in a sweet way. I never took him. I mean, I didn't take him seriously to the point that, oh my goodness, he's bragging so much. It was actually kind of sweet the way he did it. But I know that as a younger person, maybe he would be a little bit annoying at times or something. But I think he told me that either they wanted to or they did shoot a scene in which, I mean, we all know that in Enter the Dragon, she kills herself and he's looking at her. But I believe that there was a scene where he raped her or he killed her. I mean, they shot something else or they were about to shoot something else. But then somebody said, no, 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 that's too much. That's too harsh. Let's just have that gaze at her and she kills herself. Do you know anything about that? Do you know if that happened?
No, I never asked her that.
Oh yeah, of course. I know. I don't think you would ask her that. Were you raped by Bob Wall? Is that why you left the business?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
finally somebody said that. Yeah.
She only earned like about $100 for that shoot, 100
Oh my.
US.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie is the most profitable film I think Warner Brothers has ever made in terms of the returns. And she continued to have a huge career for a number of years afterwards. Like I think up until the very early '80s, late '70s, she still made a bunch of movies and stuff. But I never asked her too much about Enter the Dragon. She did say that Bruce Lee was very kind to her, and she was so grateful that he gave her that opportunity. So, but yeah, I never kind of pressed the gas on like tell me like all the all the dirt on what happened on Enter the
Yeah,
Dragon.
yeah. I meant,
She also
did you
doesn't
know by your?
remember.
I'm sorry. What?
I was going to say she actually doesn't even remember that much. So if you talk to like movie geeks like us or other people, they can say, "Yeah, and this was a director, and they changed writers halfway through, or whatever." She won't even remember
Yeah.
that stuff. I asked Lo Mong, who's another friend of mine, the Toad from Five Deadly Venoms.
Yeah.
Like I asked him about a bunch of movies that he was in, and he's like, yeah, I don't really remember that movie. We were on contract. We were just spitting those things out all the time. And, they don't remember all the titles. And even my former teacher, Sifu Tang, he was a choreographer on a number of those Shaw films, including Five Venoms. And they interviewed him many years ago about his film work. And I was off the side. He was like, Alex, what was the name of the movie I did after that? And I'm like, Chinatown Kid. And like, who's in that movie? Is it Alexander
For
Fusheng? Oh, yeah,
shame.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like he doesn't even remember. Like I had to like remind him of these movies he was in. Like that's the weird thing when you meet some of these guys is that it's like William Shatner in Star Trek. People go like, "Oh, in episode number 36," when you like he
Yeah.
doesn't remember any of that stuff, right? And a lot of those guys really don't remember a whole lot of those behind the scenes details.
Is Enter the Dragon your favorite Bruce Lee movie?
It used to be. I'm kind of partial to Way of the Dragon.
Hmm.
I know, like, well, one has the iconic fight between Bruce and Chuck Norris, which I still think is one of the best. But when I watched the Cantonese version of Way of the Dragon, um, I had a total like because when it's dubbed in English, it's kind of weird because he's always going like, "Tell him," and then he'll say because in the original version the locals don't he doesn't speak English and they don't speak Chinese, so he always has to have someone like interpret for him in the original version. But when they dubbed it into English, everyone was dubbed into English, so like a lot of the lines don't make sense, the humor doesn't translate. But if you watch it in Chinese, it's really funny as a directorial and debut as a writer as well. It's a very good first movie. It had comedy in it, and it gave you kind of an idea of what he might have done had he continued to go on. This idea that he didn't only want to play a purely tough guy. He could make himself be like a country bumpkin who was like a fish out of water. And it was a stark contrast to his previous two films in terms of the character. I mean, he's an ass kicker, but Tang Long is kind of a goofy country bumpkin. And in the previous two movies, he's just like kind of a pretty serious dude who's doesn't experience much character development throughout the film. So it was a great glimpse. So I kind of like Way of the Dragon.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. It's a toss up between Fist of Fury and Way of the Dragon. Fist of Fury being the Chinese connection because I know that in some countries, Big Boss is the Fist of Fury as well, right?
Yeah, well, it was in the '80s. They've since corrected that a long time ago. The Big Boss was Fists of Fury because
Oh, okay.
the second movie was Fist of Fury.
Okay.
Charles Damiano corrected me on this one.
Mm,
And the wrong American title for Big Boss was Fists of Fury.
mm.
And then the second movie, which was really Fist of Fury, they changed it to Chinese Connection because the movie The French Connection had been so successful that year. They wanted to basically come out with a bootleg title that made it seem like, you've seen The French Connection, now watch The Chinese Connection, right? But
Really?
but that's yeah, but that's another movie like when you see Fist of Fury in Cantonese and he beats the hell out of all the Japanese guys, and then he's standing there and he just says, 我話俾你知，中國人唔係病夫, and it's like, I'm gonna tell you, but the way he says it's like I say it, you listen. Chinese are not sick men. The way he says in Chinese, even I get goosebumps every time
Oh
I think
my
about it because
goodness, yes.
it's like so powerful, and that the way he kind of stood up to that, like, the especially after the Second World War, where the Chinese had kind of felt that they lost face internationally because they were occupied by Japan and other things that happened there, and especially post-war Hong Kong, they were very wounded by the Japanese because they were occupied, and there was a lot of like strong anti-Japanese sentiment. And there was Bruce Lee saying, like, saying proudly, perhaps for the first time, there'd been some other movies where the Chinese were beating the Japanese, but it was always kind of a little cheap. But this was the first time like a Chinese man stood there and said, like, we Chinese are not sick men. And it was very powerful. And when you hear it in Chinese and the way he says it, I can imagine the audience's reaction when they heard that in Hong Kong in the original language, that was something that just like made everyone feel really proud to be Chinese, because it's very powerful the way he
Yeah,
says it.
and to me, it's just the idea of Bruce Lee as a serial killer, which he is in Fist of Fury. It's just, I mean,
Yes.
it's just sexy, It's like, that's too much charisma. I'm gonna pass out, It's like
Right.
I
Yeah.
get to be like a Beatles fan, like like those from the from the Ed Sullivan shows, the girls going ooh. I mean, it's just
Yes.
way too. I mean, it's way above of his time. I mean, nobody has his charisma. I mean, just the way he looked. That's why I haven't found. And if we talk about action stars, I love a lot of action stars, obviously, but I haven't found anyone that doesn't even have to fight just to show me that he's, that his gaze, that his power, his majestic like a look in between kicking and punching is just so amazing. And Bay Logan said something which is quite accurate in my opinion. It's his opinion on the Fist of Fury as well. He said that Big Boss, since it was all outdoors mostly, didn't have the same feel, because once you see Fists of Fury, it's like the walls cannot contain Bruce Lee. It's like putting that much pressure inside of a jar or something, inside of a can of Coke, and then shaking it. It's like, wow, now this is too much. It's amazing. It's like a burst of energy that the walls cannot contain. And in the Big Boss, it's a little bit more, like more spilled over. I don't know.
It's dispersed a little bit because he's always outside. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. They're in the studio in Fist of Fury. It's the fake background and the day for night. They would just put the blue screen on the lens to make it look like it was nighttime, and then it was. That's really the only movie where Bruce is really, well, I suppose besides the shots for Game of Death, where he's exclusively inside a studio for pretty much the whole movie. Because
Yeah.
Way of the Dragon had some studio stuff, some outside stuff. Was a nice mix. Enter the Dragon was also inside and outside. But yeah, that is interesting. That is a very good observation by Bay. That he's inside, and you just feel he's so much more powerful for that studio. That just cannot contain him. Plus, also, I think he was so pissed off at Lo Wei at that
Oh, yeah.
point. I
Yeah.
think there was some of that anger in there, because Lo Wei famously, because they shot those movies without sound. So they would all be dubbed in afterwards. So Lo Wei, while they're shooting, would be listening to the radio for the horse racing. And then if his horse won, he would go like, and he would yell while they're in the middle of a scene because it's not being shot without sound. And Bruce was just like losing it. And so I think he probably channeled some of that rage into that performance, because he was just at his wit's end with Lo Wei by that point. So I can imagine that was part of that intensity he had in that film.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a personal emotional feeling with Fist of Fury, because a lot of the scenes are shot in Macau, and Macau, as you know, was governed by the Portuguese until 2000 or
Right.
1999 or something. And so, for example, the garden, the door, the front, the gate to the garden where he goes, no dogs in Chinese allowed, it's actually a garden called Jardim Luís de Camões, who's a Portuguese poet. So it's like looking at that
Have you
and
been there?
saying, Yeah, I've been there. I've been there. Yeah, it's wow. It's like
Yeah, it looks exactly the same as it does
yeah,
in the film.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I had a student, like a little Filipino student, who came with me, and I held him up in the jump kick position, and we took a photo there, like right there by the gate, as if he was like
Wow.
doing the jump kick. Which, by the way, they actually shot where he jumps up and breaks the sign. That was shot at Golden Harvest,
Oh, really?
because
Oh,
that when you see when he jumps up, there's nothing in the
yeah.
background.
There's nothing like
They
a
shot that in
fake
front of
sky.
Golden Harvest Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah, that no, I think it's actually outside in the parking lot where they shot that, where
Okay.
he's actually breaking the sign with the jump kick, and then so yeah, that part is like a bit of a patchwork of the park in Macau, and then back in Golden Harvest. But yeah, when you see it, it's great. And in the movie, there's that famous mistake, because if you look in the background, everyone's got 70s style clothing on, but it's supposed to be like Shanghai in, let's say, the 20s or something like that, and everyone's got like butterfly collared bell bottoms on in the background.
Okay, okay. So let's keep it a little bit in the pants with Bruce Lee, and let's go back to your beginnings. And because I want to
Okay.
geek out on Bruce Lee a little bit more further on, but do you miss, since we left at Taekwondo black belt, and we
Yes.
didn't even talk about you going into Kung Fu just yet? Do you nowadays miss kicking because of Wing Chun? Because you're doing only Wing Chun? Not only because you said you were
Uh,
doing jujitsu as well. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I still keep up my taekwondo kicks. Luckily, Wing Chun is a style that traditionally was meant to fight against other styles. Unfortunately, many Wing Chun people nowadays, when they practice Wing Chun, they just do Chi Sao against other Wing Chun, as if somehow the only people you're going to fight on the street are other Wing Chun people. People are going to put their hands like this and attack chain punches, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so they get really good at defending Wing Chun attacks, and then someone comes with a hook or a high kick, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute!" And it's like, traditionally Wing Chun was designed to fight against other styles, and unfortunately I think a lot of Wing Chun styles have lost the thread. They make their styles purely based on Wing Chun versus Wing Chun sparring. So I still have a lot of, when we do sparring in our school, one person does Wing Chun, the other person attacks like a non Wing Chun fighter. So that means the bad guys in our training get to throw boxing punches, taekwondo kicks, Thai boxing stuff, go in for takedowns, so that the Wing Chun defender can learn to fight against the types of attacks they're going to run into on the street. So I still keep my kicks sharp, and we teach all sorts of techniques to defend high kicks and spin kicks and stuff. And the students know when I put the shin pads on and I test them on their kick defense, that they're going to get a real test, because I'm not just a Wing Chun Sifu, I'm also a black belt in Taekwondo. So I
Excellent.
know how they move, and I can feign and give them the high kick and stuff, and see how well they can defend it. So it's actually still technically part of what I do and what I teach.
Excellent.
At
Excellent.
least once a week, I keep my non. I have a non Wing Chun day where when I hit the bag, there's no Wing Chun being done, so it's just boxing, kicking, all sorts of different stuff to keep my non martial arts toolkit a little bit sharper. Not to the level of kicks like what you're doing on your channel. Every time I see when you're doing all your kicks and everything, I go, oh. Think about, like,
But it's
you were
all
talking about
bullshit.
the beginning.
I would never do it in a
Yeah,
fight.
but still, yeah, but still, you were talking about how, like, oh, you always look at other people, like, and you compare, like, are you learning enough? Are you doing enough? And
Yeah.
so, like, when I see your videos, I go, like, those are all the kicks I used to spend so much time doing when I was younger, and I don't really spend that much. Like, I'll keep like my high roundhouse kick and high side kick, I keep that in good use, but like my spin kicks, I don't really train that much anymore. And then I see you do a video, and I go, like, oh, I need to do this more, because I used to be able to do this stuff. Like, and then I go, can I still do it? I don't know. And so, like, yeah, it's the same thing. Like, there's just only so much time we have in the day to get everything we want. And I'll watch your videos every now and again, and I'll be like, I'm not doing enough of this stuff, as if I'm not totally busy as it is. But yeah, sometimes I think, like, I need to do more paddle kicks and spin kicks and stuff.
I mean,
So
I totally get what you're saying, because sometimes I get here in my studio and I have pretty much everything handy. So I can choose whatever movie I want to see that might accompany me in my training. I can choose whatever song or music I want to put on. I can choose whatever type of training method. Do I kick? Do I punch? Do I do a little bit of kickboxing? Am I going to do weightlifting? Am I going to do Olympic lifting? And am I going to do jumps and plyometrics? So the worst thing you can give me is freedom to choose, because I'm going to be like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? I need to do kicks. I need to do this. I need to work a little bit of jujitsu on the grappling dummy. Sometimes it's like, I can't follow a program. I'm just too goddamn, like, I'm just too much of a grown-up child not to start just kicking all the way and doing plyometrics and stuff. So I have to really discipline myself to keep to the stick to the program. So nowadays I've started doing kickboxing again because I wanted to do a little bit of one-on-one drills. I felt like I was getting a little bit scared of getting punched. You know, it's like we do a lot of that on in fight choreography. As a stuntman, I obviously do a lot of fight choreography, but we never even get close to hurting each other. But that was not the case in a couple of the jobs that I had in lately. So it's like they were trying to hit or to get as close as possible, which did not work as well. But nobody, even the coordinators, didn't say anything. And I was like, I'm getting afraid of getting hit. I'm starting to get a little bit scared of this. I haven't been doing one-on-one drills for such a long time. So I feel like a air guitar kung fu expert. You know what I mean? It's like I'm getting used to pretend like I'm a fighter, but I'm not a fighter at all. So that kind of hurt my ego. So I was like, no, I got to go back to kickboxing. And the first few days were like, oh man, I didn't know. I didn't know how to cover myself. It was like, wow, I didn't remember what it was like to be on the striking distance, And
sure. Yeah.
So that's been helping me a lot with not having to be myself, the one to choose what am I going to do in terms of training. I mean, just having somebody else say, do this. Oh, okay, yeah, you tell me what to do. Because if I have to choose, I'm going to put a Golden Harvest movie. I'm going to kick the shit out of Bob. I'm going to kick cans and bottles, put them on the top of Bob's head, and I'm going to start doing all sorts of wheel kicks and jump wheel kicks and whatever, and I'm not going to train other things that I might need to train a little bit more. So it's like a rest for the soul when somebody else tells you to do stuff instead of you choosing.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
Do you feel that way when you have to work out by yourself?
No, I'm pretty disciplined about what I'm going to work out. I have like my strength workouts. I have my martial arts training, and on Sunday, I look at my schedule, my teaching schedule, and I go, all right, this day I'm going to do this. This day I'm going to do this. This day I'm going to do this, and then I try as best as possible to keep to that, so that I have a nice variety between days from because even in Wing Chun we have a lot of things to train. We have wall bag, we have the dummy, I have the pole, I have the knives, I have training with my students and stuff. So I have like a knife day, a pole day, a dummy day, and every day I'm teaching. So there's a lot of built-in variety to what I do, but I do try to, like, even within what I do, focus on different aspects every day, and I think that kind of keeps it fresh.
Wow. Okay. I'm glad we got to this point because I really want to know, how do you? So it's only you who assembles your week in that department, in the training department, or do you have someone that's helping you out, like a personal trainer or something with programming, like weight training? Just you?
No, in terms of programming, I mean, I've learned a lot about strength training, and I have at my school, I have a binder which is full of strength training routines, depending on like how much time I have, what I want to work on, all those kind of things. So when I go to do my strength training, I'll be like, I want to do a full body workout. I only got about 30 minutes, so I'll go into the book and I'll find a 30-minute workout and I'll go do that. And then other days I'm like, I got an hour and a half, I'm just going to do that. I'll look for a bag workout and a strength workout to kind of complement the time. So I basically have a book with workouts of different lengths and different types, and then I'll see what I feel like doing and I'll just follow it and go. And that seems to work out for me.
So could you please, I mean, I know that any given week is not exactly the same as the other before or the one after, but could you please specify how do you divide the week in terms of Wing Chun, even with specificity, like it's going to be knife on a morning, it's going to be I don't know, Chi Sao on the evening, it's going to be weight training in the middle. Can you please specify, like, could you like do a sample week for us, just so that people in the martial arts can learn how to incorporate some of those ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, what I always like to tell
Thanks.
people, because people ask me this all the time, is I just like to remind them, like, I'm a professional martial arts instructor, so I have the time to do this. For people who have like a normal job, it can be a little bit challenging to have the same schedule that I have because this is like literally all I do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But
Hmm.
what I've been doing lately is I do cardio in the morning, pretty much after I have my morning coffee. I have an Airdyne bike, and then I'll go and I'll do that kind of first thing to kind of wake up my body, and I'll go through like basic kind of stretching and all this stuff in the morning, kind of like Yin Bu and Wheels on
Wheels
Meals.
on meals.
Like, I'll kind of do like a little my morning workout routine, right? And then I'll do a little cardio, and then I'll head to the gym if I'm not going. I have a gym at my school, but if I'm not going to be at my school, I have a gym membership here locally, and usually Monday I'll do an upper body splits,
Hmm.
just normal meathead strength training stuff. I don't do anything too Wing Chun specific in the gym because I do so much Wing Chun specific thing when I do Wing Chun. Like, for example, in Wing Chun, we punch so much with our arms straight out. We do the chi sao. So the front head of the shoulder gets so much work in Wing Chun. It doesn't make sense for me to go to a gym and do like, front raises,
Oh yeah,
with the
yeah.
dumbbell. I get so much of that already. So I actually do pretty normal plain Jane strength training stuff at the gym, particularly stuff that works my body in planes of motion that are the opposite of what I do in Wing Chun to keep things in balance. So, I'll do my morning kind of wake up routine. I'll do some cardio and I'll go to the gym for about an hour and I'll do like a pretty fast but intense upper body split. And then after that, the Wing Chun training I get is usually from teaching private students. So that kind of is the training there. And usually on Monday I'll do some knife stuff at home because on Monday I stay home. Tuesday, same thing. Wake up, do my morning kind of wake up routine, basically some Wing Chun in the morning. Do my half-hour cardio on the bike, and then I'll go to the gym and I'll do legs on Tuesday
Nice.
and traditional leg stuff, but also like some kung fu based leg stuff, pistols, single leg squats, kind of weird stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then I'll usually hit the wall bag on that day because I'll go to the school and I'll do some chi sao with my students. And then on Wednesday is usually my dummy day. But same morning routine. I get up, kind of get my body awake, do a half hour of cardio, and then Wednesday I don't do any strength training, but I'll hit the heavy bag, I'll kick, I'll punch, and I'll also hit the dummy on Wednesday too. Usually, changes every week a little bit.
Yeah.
Thursday I just repeat Monday, so I'll do the upper body split, and then I'll do uh, probably pole on Thursday. And Friday I'll do legs, and Friday is my heavy bag day. And heavy bag I'll split between doing Wing Chun on the heavy bag and non Wing Chun on the heavy bag. And I have a
Nice.
pretty nasty heavy bag routine that I like to do on Fridays. It takes about 25 minutes, but it leaves me completely finished. So
Wow.
I start with 3 3-minute rounds with a 1 minute break, like boxing rounds. And
Hmm.
for those rounds, I basically spar with the bag, hitting it, going back and forth, kind of play with it, but not full power. And then after those 3 rounds, I have 4 rounds that are 1 minute each with a 1 minute break. And that's explosive burst, pop, 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 pop. Everything I do is like a burst of three, pop, 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 short break, pop, 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 short break. And I'll do that for 4 1-minute rounds with a 1 minute break. And then finally, I'll have five 30-second rounds with a 30-second break, and the 30-second rounds is nonstop. So, for example, just chain punching for the entire 30 seconds, everything I got, 30 seconds off, then maybe boxing combination for 30 seconds, off, and then maybe kicks or something like that. So it gets more and more intense, and takes 25 minutes, and that's my kind of Friday routine usually, and then Saturday on Sunday I might just teach. So yeah, it's a lot of training, but it works for me, and it gives me a nice variety of stuff to work on.
No, that's amazing, and you touched on a very very important point, which is like the idea of going to the gym and trying to mimic the exercises that you do in the martial arts with weights on. It's just not a good approach. I mean, what you want to do is develop overall strength, overall hypertrophy, whatever, so that you can use and transform that power, that overall strength and power, and even the muscular development, so that you don't get the injuries, so that you do a better work in the martial arts. So the transfer would be in overall items
Yes.
like strength, and not going to not picking up 2 pound dumbbells and going chain punching.
Right.
And don't correct me on this because I know I'm doing it wrong. But is it on top?
That's
Is it
fine.
on
That's
top
fine.
or on the bottom? I never know.
It should go over. Yeah.
Oh, it's over.
They should be going wrist over wrist. Yeah. Fist over fist. Very good.
Yeah, you told me.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Yeah.
I was gonna ask. Oh, one other thing. How many classes do you teach a day, for example? Like in a given day, how many classes would you say you teach?
Well, it depends. I just got back from Europe, so I was teaching
Oh, so now it
privately
was
pretty
yeah.
much every single day.
Okay, yeah.
It was nonstop while I was there. When I'm
But you
here,
kind
I've
of
actually
spare
peeled,
yourself. But you kind of spare yourself over there, right? In New York.
no.
No.
Oh, in New York. Well, I don't teach quite as intensely here as I do. If I'm in Europe for 2 weeks and have instructors who've invited me, I'll be teaching them pretty intensely from morning to night. But here, I have a team, so I don't teach that many group classes anymore. Right now, I only teach 2 group classes a week, and I teach 2 instructor classes a month. So my group class, I've pared that down quite a bit, and the rest are private lessons. So I usually teach maybe 2 to 3 private lessons a day, but I don't do that every day. Lately, I've been handing over more of the students to my team. Just because I want to work on other projects, books, online projects, and stuff like that. Yeah, it's I stay pretty busy teaching for the most part, but it's a little different every day.
Wow. I'm asking this because I was working with a friend of mine who's Krav Maga instructor, and he's a very high ranked because he was like the right arm or one of the right arms of this very well known master in France who's Richard Duyeb. He's one of the biggest influences in Krav Maga, and he was that friend of mine here in Portugal. He was teaching, I don't know, like anywhere from 4 to 6 classes every day. And he was once in a seminar with his master, with Richard Duyeb, and Richard was like, Paulo, how many classes do you teach a day? And he was like, oh, 4 to 6. He was like, teach one or 2 at the most. You want to keep the energy level. You want to keep doing this for a long time. You want to keep the passion. Just 1 or 2. And he was like, 1 or 2? I can't live like that. I mean, at 1 or 2, I can't get enough money. And it was like, delegate, whatever, fuck it. I mean, if you want to conserve the passion and the love, and I was like, that's kind of hard to do. I don't know. So I wanted your opinion on that. So, but obviously you delegate quite a lot.
It is true. When I started teaching in the first few years of my school, I mean, it pretty much did everything myself, and that was both good and bad. You can't do everything well. So at some point, the hardest thing I think for most martial arts instructors to do is to leave their classes in the hands of other people because we're perfectionists. But at some point, we have to make sure that our team is doing it the way we want it. And the only way we're going to know that is if we give them a chance to do it, if we let go, if you try not to control too much and let your instructors make some mistakes from time to time, because we made those mistakes when we started teaching ourselves. So it's difficult. So it depends. Like if someone is a relatively new instructor for a few years, I can see why they're like, no, I need to teach from morning to night. But yeah, I'm at the point now, it's like, in terms of what my time is best used for. I mean, I have a team of people who can teach really well. And sometimes they even teach beginners maybe even better than I do because they still remember what it's like to be a beginner. I'm probably a much better instructor for people who are already instructors or already at a much higher level. Although I do like teaching beginners. I do occasionally take beginning students. But a lot of my team, they remember those struggles a little bit more. So delegating at some point is a necessary evolution if you really want your school to grow, because the Sifu cannot do it all themselves. It just no business runs that way.
Yeah, I could never be one of those guys who teach like, I mean, I have friends of mine who are personal trainers. And they have like 8 to 9 students every day, to 9 clients every day, and I'm like, I'm too much of an enthusiast. I do a big performance. I wear myself out so much in each given class, and I was like, wow, in martial arts class specifically, where you have to even show, I mean, I can just tell the student to squat. I don't have to show it every single time. But once you're doing and showing technique, you also have to be showing the technique. So it's probably very energy demanding. Okay. Let's put the speaking of punches, let's put the first clip in. Let's react a little bit to this because I asked you to
All right.
I asked you to choose a couple of clips. So this was the fight that you were mentioning, right? Was this the fight? The first
Oh yeah,
punch?
with the one with Brad Pitt. No, he does it. Yeah, he lets him beat him up a little bit, and then he does the one punch
Oh, okay.
where it's like when you first see him, and it doesn't look like he's much. He's kind of getting his butt kicked, and then he stands up. Yep. And now you're gonna see he's gonna sidestep and give him this like straight right, and this is like straight out of the Wing Chun playbook right here.
Yeah, I want to know technically
Stretching
how.
there.
Oh man, that's just
I haven't seen this.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's Way of the Dragon.
If I recall correctly, he's going to sidestep to the right and basically do a right straight punch.
Yep.
And it's going to be a one punch knockout.
Jab.
I'm never going to understand what he's saying.
Oh, that is so cool.
And it's just a one punch, right?
Yeah.
But just like the way he stepped offline and did that straight punch there was like, wow, that was so awesome. I remember seeing that and just going like, wow, that was a Wing Chun punch if I've ever seen one on the big screen.
So what makes it be a Wing Chun punch and not a boxing punch? What makes it different technically that one Wing Chun student would go like, oh, that's Wing Chun?
Well, I mean, it's not to say that they weren't doing something out of boxing there, but it's just the way that it worked and the way that it looked visually in that scene looks very similar to something that was kind of taught in classical Wing Chun. Wing Chun is a style that's known for its straight punch, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of people think that that's all we do. We only have a straight punch. We have other different types of punches, other different ways of hitting. But what people forget is that even if we prefer the straight punch because it's economical, it's short, but we use a lot of angles with our footwork. Now, a lot of Wing Chun styles don't. A lot of Wing Chun styles are very linear, but that doesn't mean all Wing Chun styles are linear. So even if our punch is straight, we'll often use an offlining step to avoid clashing with our opponent's force. So I might use a step that's a little round to deliver my straight punch, especially when someone is charging me. And that's not something unheard of in other martial arts. So it's not something exclusive to Wing Chun. But the way that it came out in that film looks like one of the basic swing defenses we used to teach our students when someone is charging at you this way here, where you basically just go offline and then do that straight punch rather than trying to block that thing with brute power or something like that. So I always thought that punch and snatch really did look like that idea of offlining and then giving your opponent a quick straight punch. So
no, yeah, for sure, yeah. It does. So at what age did you start doing Wing Chun, and where was it?
So I started Wing Chun, I think at about age 14 or 15. And that was when we were living in Seattle. And I started Wing Chun not in traditional Wing Chun school, but in a modern Wing Chun school that was from, as many people know, Bruce Lee lived in Seattle for a few years when he first came from Hong Kong. So his first few students were all there in Seattle. So the Wing Chun that I started, they were like descendants of Bruce Lee's early students in Seattle, in particularly descendants of the James DeMille and Ed Hart line. So the first Wing Chun that I learned was actually Bruce Lee's modified Seattle era pre-Jeet Kune Do Wing Chun. So that's where I got my first education in Wing Chun was in a Bruce Lee style of Wing Chun, I suppose.
Wow.
So I started that at about 14, 15, did that very seriously for about 3 years. And then I started to get the bug about like, well, I should maybe also learn classical Wing Chun instead of just this kind of modernized Bruce Lee Wing Chun, because I want to see if Bruce Lee didn't learn the whole system, maybe there's still things in Wing Chun that are maybe Bruce Lee didn't see or had not learned, and maybe I want to go out and learn those things, and then see if I would come to the same conclusion Bruce Lee came to. Because Bruce Lee was critical about Wing Chun in some ways, but he also had barely 2 years of Wing Chun training as a teenager. So some of his criticisms of Wing Chun are also based on the fact that he really didn't learn it for that long and didn't know a lot of things that we have in Wing Chun. So he would make claims that that Wing Chun only had one type of punch, which is not true. It was more what Bruce Lee had only learned one type of punch in Wing Chun, not that Wing Chun only has one type of punch. So I wanted to get into the classical Wing Chun system and see if I could find out if I learned the rest of it, would I come to the same conclusion Bruce Lee came to, or would I think that Wing Chun actually might have something that Bruce Lee thought was missing? He just had not learned it. So that then later brought me to Leung Ting Wing Chun, which is the lineage of Wing Chun that I teach. When I was around 19, about 20 years old, that's when I started WT, which is the way the Wing Chun is spelled in the Leung Ting Association. And that's kind of the one I've been doing ever since.
Wow! Such a ride, such an amazing ride. So I asked you to choose a couple of clips out of movies. The first one that comes to mind, and obviously I thought that you were going to mention that, is Prodigal Son. This is the beginning, right? Because I actually haven't seen Prodigal Son in such a long time. Okay. Oh wow!
So good.
Oh
yeah, you will not.
Man.
You will not find people who can do this anymore.
Oh, this is
it's so
great. Choreography.
Yes, and it's such a great blend of classical Wing Chun with obviously it's everything is stylized for choreography. There's some clearly non-Wing Chun stuff done in there on Lam Ching Ying's part, but it's pretty good. And it's a very cool fight scene because the whole like setup for the challenge, the way they kind of set it up in the story was very interesting, and the contrast of the two styles, the harder style versus the softer, more pliable Wing Chun is very cool.
Do you know for a fact if Lam Ching Ying practiced Wing Chun, or was it just for the part?
It's just for the part. As far as I can tell, this is the only role where he used Wing Chun, and he actually does a pretty damn good job. But most of those guys were really good at adapting the specifics of a style because they had such a great base in martial arts as opera performers. Lam Ching Ying did not come from the same opera school as Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung. He came from the Madame Fan Foc Fa. His teacher was female, which is why he's so good at playing the female roles. Mm-hmm. He also had a female opera teacher, and he was quite adept at mimicking styles. So he would just have to maybe see how the Wing Chun people held their hands and what kind of movements they did, and then he would kind of build that into some more general choreography, and they were really good at faking it. Sammo was a big fan of Wing Chun. This was his second attempt at a Wing Chun film after Warriors 2. And I think in terms of the accuracy of the Wing Chun, Prodigal Son is better than Warriors 2 in terms of the Wing Chun side of it being a little bit more accurate. He also had a consultant, a Wing Chun Sifu named Guy Lai, but this film here was definitely way more accurate. So yeah, I love that fight scene. It's got great little bits of acrobatics in there mixed in with the Wing Chun. It's really, really fantastic.
When you said that opera school, was it the one where Mars and the other guys came from?
Yeah, so there were, from what I understood, there were two main opera schools. There probably were more, but in terms of the people, there's the Jim Yun one, which is the the Tatsu Folk, the Seven Fortunes, where everyone with the surname Yun, the borrowed surname Yun, came out of, and Yun Bu, Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan, all of those guys. And then there was another one which was run by a female instructor, and Lam Ching Ying came from there, and a number of other stuntmen came from there as well. Yeah, and they had a slightly different flavor to the way they did things, and really great stuntmen.
So next clip is Yip Man 1.
The Master Leo challenge at the beginning of the film. Yep.
Let's see.
Yip Man 1 is my favorite out of all of the Yip Man movies. Yep.
I don't know why. Somehow I thought you didn't like the Ip Man movies. I don't know why.
I'm not a big fan of the Yip Man films after this one.
Oh, okay.
So I like one. Yeah, the other ones they just get you know, it's I'm a Wing Chun Sifu. I care about Yip Man, the real Yip Man, and it's kind of ridiculous the way they went with the story. I
Oh,
like
yeah.
this scene because it's a challenge fight. It's a friendly challenge, so he's not really trying to murder Liu Sifu in this one here. It's but it's very technically accurate. He's just using very simple movements to deflect. He's not using like the real nasty stuff. He's just kind of tossing him and using palm strikes and hitting him on the chest in a very nice way. But there's some really cool beats in there where you can kind of see the technical skill is really quite accurate. So especially in this exchange here, you see the bong sao, the fak sao, hitting, sticking, using the elbows a little bit, posing. Yeah, the feigned eye gouge, the light chain punches, and there's even like I think a neck pull and a lifting punch in the next phrase, which you will see here. Boom, right there. Yep, and the kick and the pull. That whole little beat there, and the whole like peeling the head and turning. That was actually extremely accurate. I think, although Wing Chun Sifus will always argue about the differences of their styles, that last little phrase there was pretty accurate in terms of the Wing Chun technique and how someone would apply that. And I think it's one of the better phrases of choreography in the entire Yip Man series. And it's also why I appreciate Yip Man 1 much more because it seemed like they took a little bit more care to make the fight scenes Wing Chun accurate.
Yeah.
Whereas that became less and less of an issue in the other films. One of my big issues with like Yip Man 4, for example, although my good friend Chris Collins is in it, the great Scott Adkins is in it, my friend Lo Mong is in it. So I don't like talking bad about these films, um, but I think that I could see that they were recycling a lot of choreography from previous movies, and it just felt like they were kind of dialing it in. Wing Chun does have the problem because it's a very straightforward style. The idea is if someone attacks you, you want to finish the fight quickly. It's not a style like Hong Kong that has such a wide array of movements. It's a very specialized style. So the problem you run into with Wing Chun is it can get repetitive for choreography because, you know, how many different ways are you going to chain punch someone, trap their arm, grab their arm and punch them without it always looking like the same thing? And I admit that as a Wing Chun Sifu, that for choreography, if you don't add acrobatics and some other things in there, it can get repetitive really quickly. Having said that, I think they still did a good job in the first movie because they took care to do it well. And I just didn't feel that same amount of care in the follow-up films when it
Yeah.
came to the
Yeah.
choreography.
And too
Yeah.
much wire work and too much gimmicks. I don't like it. I'm one of the old school type of guys that like for example, Jet Li. I mean, my favorite Jet Li movies are Shaolin Temple 1, Shaolin Temple 2, Shaolin Temple 3, and that's it. I mean, even if you go, I mean, it's not that it's not I'm not saying it's not great artistic expression. It's just a different realm of the industry that I'm not so fond of. But even Once Upon a Time in China and stuff like that, I'm not a huge fan of that. I realize how much of a how hard it is to do fight scenes like that, and they do have a lot of work in them and a lot of artistry, but not to my taste. I mean, nothing beats Shaolin Temple 1, Shaolin Temple 2, and Shaolin Temple 3 in my opinion. Yeah. It's much more
I
like the
prefer
physical prowess.
Right, absolutely. And it's harder and harder for people to do that kind of stuff now because they don't have the training. I
Yeah.
liked how Jackie used wire work like in Drunken Master 2, where it was just to like make things like he would hang in the air just a little bit more than humanly possible, or he would kick someone and they would go just a little further than normal, but he wasn't flying. And so I like when they sometimes use some subtle wire work to like pull the feet out when someone gets
Yeah.
kicked or something. But like the wholesale, like, you know, in Once Upon a Time in China, like Mo Yin Guk is the no shadow kick. And the no shadow kick is a real thing. It's the no shadow kick is, if I have all of my weight on my back leg and I'm fighting with the hands and I can kick you, my leg can come up and kick you. You don't see it because I've already shifted my weight. That's the no shadow kick. But then in the Wong Fei-ho movies, he's like on a wire doing this and he's like mowing dirt. And it's like
Yeah.
they even take something real and they made it like ridiculous. Right?
Yeah.
So
While doing a monologue.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I know what you mean when they do a little bit of that. Yeah, okay, that's much more to my taste. When I'm remembering, I was just rewatching like a couple days ago with my friend. I was rewatching one of the kicks that is performed in Dragons Forever when Benny Urquidez jumps in the beginning of the final fight when he jumps off the table. He's doing cocaine or something, and then he jumps off the table and he kicks Yun Biao, which is not Yun Biao. It's probably the guy who took the hit. It was probably Chin Karalok. It was always that guy who took all the hits.
I think so. Yeah.
And
he did a lot of stunts. He even did one of the kicks for Jackie that in that movie where they did the kick and kicked him there too as well.
Yeah, with the left leg, exactly. And so when he gets kicked, you can totally make out that he does get kicked in the face. But then you see a little bit of a flight, and me and my friend were like, oh, they used wire here. That's interesting, because all the time I thought I hadn't revisited that scene in quite a while. So all this time I thought that it was just the hit to the face and not a wire, but the wire did bring out a little bit more drama to that single Benny Urquidez hit, so it did look amazing. So I'm glad you mentioned that. One more scene that I would like to ask you about. I don't have to put it now unless you have something specific to say about it, but we can put it on YouTube or something while we talk. But how do you feel about Jackie, or I can put it later. How do you feel about Jackie Chan doing a little bit of wooden dummy work in Rumble in the Bronx?
Well, I always have two ways of looking at that stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
As as kind of like a general fan, I think it's awesome. I remember seeing that when it came out in the movie theater, and they did the typical Hong Kong putting the dust on like the powder. So when he hits it, you get those like puffs, right? So there was something very cool about that, and he goes very fast and he starts off easy to tuck 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 tuck, and then it kind of builds it up. So it was also very dramatic the way he did it. So as a fan of the genre, I think it's awesome. When I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" But I was very green in the Wing Chun world. Now I see that years later, as someone who actually knows Wing Chun, and I go, "Oh, I mean, the techniques border from generic to completely made up, but it's good enough for normal people to get excited about it." Years later, he would actually learn some wooden dummy techniques from my teacher, Sifu Leung. There's a photo of Jackie Chan on the wooden dummy at the Leung School in Hong Kong. And a lot of people ask me if Leung was the one who taught him the wooden dummy stuff for Rumble in the Bronx. But Rumble in the Bronx was a number of years before he came to the Leung gym. And Jackie already... Well, he doesn't do much wooden dummy in Wheels on Meals. He kind of goes up to it and then he just cracks it with the one and walks away, right? So I don't think these things are unfamiliar. I think sometimes people they don't realize how good these guys are at imitating styles. They just need to learn how to you change the hand and now it's mantis, and you do this one it's snake, and you do this one and it's dragon. They just they know the basic shapes and how to make something look like a certain style, even without having the pedigree of training in there. So I think I don't know how much Jackie Chan really learned of Wing Chun, but he could definitely fake it on a wooden dummy, and I think that's totally fine for the fans.
Oh yeah, but somehow I thought so. So I wanted to get that opinion because I somehow I thought it was like, okay, he's probably just doing a little bit of entertainment with the dummy more than actual technique. Well,
Yes.
I'm not going to take much more of your time because I know you got classes to teach, but I know we're probably going to have to do a part two because I know we've been covering a lot of topics and we get very excited talking about this stuff. But there's actually a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. Bruce Lee, because obviously it's our probably our favorite subject. Two things that I've realized by watching your podcast, and that I don't think many people talk about that. The first one is you just said something in your latest podcast about Bruce Lee going to the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
Okay, so I have no idea how many countries did Bruce Lee visit. I know he went to Switzerland at one time to train Roman Polanski. Yeah. No,
Right.
it was the writer, the Sterling Elephant.
No, it was Roman Polanski.
Roman
He
Polanski.
went with Roman on a ski trip, and he was basically just kind of Roman's pet kung fu instructor, which Bruce didn't really seem to like that much. Actually, I don't think Bruce really went to that many different countries, which is why
I was wondering.
this book. Yeah, the time when he went to Dominican Republic, I think that was in 1970. So it's right in that lull between he was not getting any acting jobs. And I think, Jun Rhee, who was a good friend of his, had a bunch of Taekwondo schools in the Dominican Republic, and he wanted to bring Bruce Lee to help him promote some of his schools. But I think he also wanted to help Bruce out a little bit because Bruce wasn't really getting the acting jobs. So I think, I see kind of like a lot of his friends carrying him a little bit, like giving him jobs and stuff like that at that time period, because he didn't really have a lot going on. And then eventually a year later he would go and do The Big Boss. But there was a time period there in the late 60s and in 1970 where Bruce really didn't have a whole lot going on, so he was taking trips with Roman Polanski and going to the Dominican Republic to promote Taekwondo schools for his friend. And it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, when you said Dominican Republic, I was like, I would never picture Bruce Lee in Dominican Republic, but I also would never picture him in Switzerland. So we know Switzerland, we know obviously Italy, Rome, we know probably mainland China. Maybe not.
I don't think Bruce ever went to mainland China, to be quite honest.
Oh, no, really?
Travel from Hong Kong to mainland China was not normal in those days.
Okay.
So I would not be in the least bit surprised if Bruce never stepped foot in mainland China. Maybe Shenzhen, maybe. There are photos of him in Fanling, which is in the New Territories, which is close to the border, but I don't think he would have any reason to go over into China, especially at that time.
Fanling, isn't it where Ip Man is buried?
Yeah, Fanling, very good, and that's one of the places we're going on the tour.
Yes.
So you will you'll be there at the train station. I'll show you where Bruce Lee. There's a photo that Bruce Lee took when he was a teenager at a temple. I will literally take you to that temple, and you can take the same photo. So and that temple is right next to where Grandmaster Yip Man is buried, and that temple, by the way, is also where Alexander Fusheng's ashes are.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm also going to show you that when we're there as well. So we'll not only pay respects to Yip Man, but also to Alexander Fusheng on that same day, within a few minutes of each other. Yeah.
Especially since we know that Alexander Fusheng lived in the same mansion that Bruce Lee did afterwards. So people were like, and he died in a car accident, right? So people were like, oh my goodness, that house is tainted. There's something about that house.
Both Bruce Lee and Alexander Fusheng died while living there. They did not die at that house, but they died while living there. So it was like they turned it into a love motel for a while. And now they tore down the house, but they've since built a new one, and they built it in the same spot on the lot. So the new house that they built, I saw on Google Maps, is kind of the same size as the old one. So I'll still bring you guys there so you can kind of see where it is, and I'll give you guys some insider stuff in terms of other places he went and things like that. I'm really this is my 27th trip to Hong Kong this summer. So you anyone who's been to Hong Kong with me knows I know where everything is. So
Nice.
you're gonna definitely enjoy it. Yeah.
We're just finishing, but I wanted to ask you another thing that popped out from the podcast, which you said, I think it was probably with John Little. I'm not sure, either John Little or Matthew Polly. I don't remember, but you said something about how you're one of the biggest Bruce Lee fans, and you're always checking out his pictures, and new pictures arrive, or people. I mean, he took so many pictures, like hundreds, thousands of pictures, and we get to see new pictures of his like every single day. If we go Google it, we sometimes we clash into other sets of pictures that we never seen before. So you mentioned that he had a personal photographer or something that that would go with him to training practice and stuff. So he was ahead of his time in terms of marketing.
Yeah, so I don't know, but someone said that on my podcast, that he had a photographer with him all the time. But I don't know about that because Bruce was dead broke for most of his career. So I don't know where he's getting all this money for to have a photographer around him all the time.
Maybe a student.
The crazy thing is that, I mean, it's not like today you have, a high level camera and it's easy to take photos. Back then it was a big deal. You had to take the photos, you had to develop them, but yet somehow he managed to have photos everywhere he went, like whether it was when he was training, on the sets, going to this place, going to that place. And as someone who's seen the lion's share of those photos, I'm still blown away that I'll be on Instagram and I'll look and I'll be like, I never saw this photo of Bruce Lee before. And I've seen most photos of Bruce Lee at this point in my career. Steve Carriage has some great books about Bruce Lee, Mandarin Superstar, Way the Intercepting Fist, where he has all these like behind the scenes photos from the Golden Harvest days. The studio shot so many photos of Bruce. Many you've seen, but many they never used. They just had so many test shots and all sorts of things. And it's really, really quite remarkable that, you can still find new photos of Bruce Lee, someone who's been gone for this year. It'll be 50 years since he passed away. And in July, it'll be the 50-year anniversary of his death, which is crazy.
Half a century, man. I mean, it just comes to show that he was ahead of his time in terms of, because he always looks good in those pictures as well. It's like he knew that somehow it would be important to capture the moments. They have good quality in a way. So who knows? Maybe a student or something would take some pictures of him, or maybe he would be interested in having some of that recollection of his training sessions, and which speaks volumes to the way that he already portrayed himself. And he started marketing before marketing existed in a way. It's kind of funny to realize that. And I don't want to bother you with a topic that has been discussed so many times that you've actually said, I'm not going to talk about Bruce Lee's death anymore, because, the internet is full of everybody with ideas, with theories, conspiracy theories, whatever. But if people are interested, and if you haven't seen already, Sifu ALEX Richter was one of the people to actually do a video on some letters that surfaced on Bruce Lee's drug habits that might have been, one of the major impacts in his life, in his short-lived life in the last few years. So I'm not going to bother you with that. I'm just going to bother you with something else, which is, Rick Baker told me that, and I'm forgetting. I'm having some sort of amnesia, not remembering his name, which is quite a shame. But the Korean guy, not Jihanjai, the Korean guy who fought him in Way of the Dragon and didn't even fight him. Help me out. The one Wang Hin-sik, obviously Wang Hin-sik. Wang Hin-sik was interviewed by Rick Baker. And he did like this whole lecture talking about some people that were interested in knowing a little bit about his background. And he said something to the extent of, he Juan Hinsik got out of the business because he knew that the business was, corrosive and had a little bit of poison to it, like people wanting to be. It was a little bit of shallow, like wanting to be a Hollywood superstar and this and that. It's a whole, it's a poisonous industry.
Yes.
So he believes that had Bruce Lee not been an actor who wanted to be a superstar, who wanted to be better paid than Steve McQueen and then James Coburn and all that stuff, that had he not had tasted a little bit of that success and known that he was going to go places, he could still be alive, because probably his vanity or his bad habits took over, his anxiety about the whole thing, and he started being obsessed. Instead of being just obsessed with martial arts, he started being obsessed with being a superstar. Do you think,
Right.
in your fan opinion, do you think that that would be probably right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. His other former student, Sterling Silliphant, who's a very famous writer, was trying to help him do the silent flute. He said there wasn't any, and I'm paraphrasing here from the exact quote. He said there wasn't anything wrong with Bruce Lee that another couple years of being a movie star wouldn't have solved. He basically said that Bruce Lee had, all the issues of someone who suddenly came into such massive amount of success very quickly. And, people tend to go a little overboard when it's suddenly dumped on them. And he kind of had the feeling that had Bruce Lee been able to ride out those first few years, he would have been okay again, because he kind of felt that Bruce Lee was going through the same type of, I suppose, growing pains that any person lucky enough to become a big star so quickly would normally go through. It's very easy, though, to say that whatever killed Bruce Lee was a result of, and then pick anything that he did in his life, because everything he did in his life brought him to that moment. So it's very easy to kind of say, well, it was his absolute dedication to martial arts, which he would never give up. And he just, and that drove him to his death. Or it was the fact that he wanted to be the number one superstar and that drove him to his death. It's very easy to create a narrative in hindsight. But the reason why I stopped talking about Bruce Lee's death, quite honestly, and it really pissed off some of my people watching, because they're like, well, why did you say something if you're not going to say something? And that's because I recently came into some information that answered those questions that I had in terms of the missing bits of information. But because that stuff was shared with me confidentially from a very important source, I just decided I'm not going to talk about Bruce Lee's death anymore, because I don't, the case is kind of closed for me. I could still be wrong, but to a pretty high degree of certainty, I think I know without any tinfoil hats or conspiracies what it was, and so the topic is kind of done as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Oh, but you revealed what you think it is, right? Or you never did it.
No,
Oh, okay, okay.
I talked about it. I talked about it until what my theory was, until I was given this information. The great thing about having a podcast is people who are in the know, they watch and they send you stuff. And so I got sent some very, very good information. And
Okay,
I'm not going to say who or what or whatever,
yeah, of
but
course, of course. Yeah, yeah.
answered it answered the question I had.
Okay, okay. So if we want to know your theory, we have to go back to your earlier podcasts, or you don't even. Oh, okay. Oh, so it's like that. Okay, okay. We're no longer brothers.
Like that.
Okay, that's very childish of you,
Yeah,
Sifu. I'm sorry.
People got really upset, but the problem was this. I talk about his death all the time. I had ideas, but there were a few things I didn't know. I got on very good information, the answers to a few of those questions, but I got it confidentially.
Yeah,
And
of
the
course.
problem is, so now people are going to keep asking me about it, and then I can't keep ducking it, So I just said I'm not going to talk about it anymore, and I'm sorry if it kind of pisses people off, but we survived for 50 years not being sure why Bruce Lee died. And even if you know the exact reason, literally doesn't change anything. He's not here.
Yep, true.
Maybe when we're in Hong Kong, you buy me a beer and maybe something.
That will happen for sure. Okay. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's the internet connection or something. But we're kind of you're kind of bumping a little bit. I'm not sure if it's the internet connection. I just want to finish with, like Bruce Lee had Taoism and the be water and the I don't hit, it hits sort of philosophy that helped him through the wrongdoings and the worst parts of his life. Maybe. Do you yourself, Sifu Alex Richter, have quotes or certain philosophy aspects that that resound to you and that help you through the hardest times, or is there something that you would like to share on that department?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a kung fu sifu, so it's kind of a given that I should have a strong influence with Asian philosophy, which I did for many years. But I have to admit that lately, I've been really getting into Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism.
Wow.
I think Stoic philosophy is probably one of the most robust philosophies you can find in terms of dealing with adversity and kind of getting over things and framing things in a way where you can take struggles and frame them positively. And so the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, I think that this is something I've been following a lot in recent years, much more so than Taoism. I feel that it really speaks to me, especially at this time in my life. So yeah, Stoicism.
Wow. Yeah. Yep. Thank you so much for your contribution. I think everybody should read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And I do believe that a
Yes.
little bit of that squeezing out the pulp out of life, or sucking on the marrow of life, like Robin Williams said in Dead Poet Society. That's the best way to do it is
Yes.
to philosophize a little bit about our lives, where we want to go, what we want to do. And it might look like a little bit of an existential crisis every once in a while, but hey, we could get over it. I mean, it's a little bit of what makes us humans, the ability to think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this. I'm gonna put your social media everywhere here so that people can follow you if they hadn't followed you, if they weren't following you before. And I look forward to seeing you in August, so that we have our trip and I can get you liquored up enough so that you tell me how in the world did Bruce Lee die.
Sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so go teach your class, Bruce Leroy. You're free, grasshopper.